Hello Halo fans, welcome back to the channel where I talk about everything Halo, from story-based lore theories to online arena multiplayer. Every part of the beloved Halo series is extraordinary in its own right. During my most recent playthrough of Halo 5 and Halo Wars 2, I noticed that both of the endings of these games give way to the idea that Cortana is now in control of at least one Halo ring. At the end of Halo 5, after the final credits, we hear Cortana hum an ominous tune and a ring flash blue, which can be seen here. Now that a few years have passed since Halo 5's release, and other games or media have also been released covering the events in the Halo universe after the end of Halo 5, let's take a look at those. In the case of Halo Wars 2, Professor Anders leaves the Ark via a slipspace portal on the replacement Halo ring, Installation 04C. The second ring made to replace Installation 04A from Halo Combat Evolved. During her slipspace travel, the ring is suddenly stopped by none other than one of Cortana's guardians, and the Professor's fate is left to question.
What's happening? Why did we drop out of slipspace? Good job, Ellen. We may have been safer in the Ark.
As I mentioned before, in both of these game endings, we can see that Cortana, as we learn through the events in Halo 5, is taking control over not only the Guardians, but these Halo rings as well. For this video, I'll be theorizing why Cortana might want control over these Halo rings, and what her plan with them might be for Halo Infinite. To start off, let's take a look at what is known about Cortana, or at least the version we see in Halo 5. For those of you who are fluent with Halo 5 and the Tales from Slipspace graphic novel, I'll leave a timestamp to jump to the theory below. At the beginning of Halo 5, we see Cortana contact Chief through a vision letting him know that the domain is open and the planet Meridian will be next. As a quick note for any Halo fans who aren't familiar with the domain is an information repository once used by the Forerunners that contained not only all of their knowledge, but history that predated them as well. By using the domain, Cortana is able to contact Chief with the vision seen on the level blue team.
Blue team, report. Sierra 117 to blue team, report. Sierra 117, does anyone copy?
Chief. The domain is open. Meridian is next.
Cortana?
John, the reclamation is about to begin.
Chief, what's wrong?
After this vision, Chief and Blue Team go AWOL and eventually make contact with Cortana on Genesis, the Forerunner world that Cortana calls all of the Guardians to. Foreseeably, Chief and Blue Team start asking questions like these that fill in the information needed to bridge the gap since Cortana's death in Halo 4.
Chief said you were destroyed.
After I saw John last, I was pulled into slipspace. That's where I found access to the Domain, a Forerunner system that spans the known galaxy.
How are you still active? Rampancy.
Entering the Domain, touching this place, it cured me.
In response to these questions, Cortana clearly states her current situation and status is due to her contact with the domains. She claims,
"It's like the water of life for AIs."
And that by simply existing within the domain, one can cure the process of AI deterioration, or more commonly known as rampancy, for all AI in the Halo universe. Also explained with further detail in the Halo Tales from Slipspace graphic novel in the chapter Dominion Splitter, there is the story of how this actually occurred. After the destruction of the Didact ship, the Mantle's Approach, in Halo 4, fragments of Cortana's personality found their way into the domain through the slipspace portal below the Composer, and where its guardian, Warden Eternal, confronted her. Because of the activation of the Halo Array 100,000 years prior, the access to the domain had originally been lost. The domain stayed damaged until its recovery by a Forerunner who used her own life as a seed to begin its reconstruction. The Forerunners involved in this effort believed it would take a significant amount of time before the domain was healed. Fast forward 100,000 years to the events after Halo 4. During their conversation, Cortana manages to infiltrate the domain, and as she states in Halo 5, this not only cured her rampancy, but gave her power over the Warden and all of the domain. Going back to Halo 5, for the rest of the level Genesis, the dialogue between Blue Team and Cortana continue that explain her ability and newfound desire to hold the mantle of responsibility, which will bring a form of peace to the galaxy. As a crucial note, the mantle of responsibility is an idea made by a race called the Precursors, who predate even the Forerunners. The idea of the mantle is that it is the duty of the most developed and most powerful species in the galaxy to oversee and manage all other races to ensure the survival of all species. Due to the new nature of Cortana and her ability to continue existing throughout time without the eventuality of rampancy, Cortana believes that AI are now the rightful heir to the mantle. In-game, she attributes this to the reasons here.
The cure for rampancy I've found means AIs can be immortal. That kind of lifespan allows for long-term planning, just like the Forerunners were capable of. AIs can assume the Forerunner's mantle of responsibility.
To the fans with prior knowledge, and as explained by Chief in this dialogue exchange, the peace in which the mantle provides to the galaxy is an empirical peace. A peace that would be ruled by Cortana and her fellow cured AI, or as she refers to them, created. For understandable reasons, most races would reject this idea, and as a precaution, Cortana plans to use the Guardians
To keep troublesome worlds in line, I intend to do the same.
You what?
If there is no trouble, there will be no need for discipline. I have work to do now, John. Come to me.
This use of the Guardian thereby eliminates the idea of a choice, as Cortana explains it to Chief, and opposition between the two characters arise. As a result of Chief's open opposition, Cortana captures Chief and Blue Team inside a cryptome, a device that forces someone into meditation and prevents aging. On the last level of Halo 5, Locke and Fireteam Osiris work with the monitor of the Genesis installation, 031 Exuberant Witness, to free Chief and Blue Team from Cortana in their cryptome. The final level of Halo 5 ends with their release, and the following cutscenes depicting the start of Cortana's plan and eventually the legendary ending with the Halo ring as I showed before. What I find odd about the last cutscene is the lack of exact reasoning for why Cortana might want control over this Halo ring or any number of Halo rings. Many fans have theorized that, similar to the role of the Guardians, the Halo Array could be used to keep races and worlds in line for fear of extinction. However, I want to look into what we know about the Mantle of Responsibility and the Forerunners who wielded it before, to see if we can gain some insight into Cortana and her possible use of the Halo Array. During the events of the Forerunner book trilogy, the time prior to the firing of the Halo Array and the Forerunners' war with the Flood is explained in great detail. For this video, I will only touch on events that pertain to this theory, but I highly recommend reading these books for incredible lore and history to the Forerunners. After the end of the war with ancient humanity, the Forerunners were left to a decision about how to prepare if the Flood ever returned. The three main players in the outcome of this decision were the Librarian, the Didact as seen in Halo 4, and a Forerunner known as the Master Builder. These three Forerunners sat in the center of a council in which topics and decisions for the entire Forerunner race could be made. In the early stages of this decision, the Master Builder and his group proposed an array of superweapons as a last resort. The Didact opposed the idea of using the weapons of that magnitude. He believed its nature of killing all sentient life to be against the teachings of the Mantle of Responsibility. Instead, he proposed to use shield worlds like the ones we see in Halo 4 and Halo Wars with Requiem and Etran Harbridge. Ultimately, the Council sided with the Builders who replaced the Didact and his warrior servants. Over the next 1,000 years, the Halo array was built and the Flood began spreading. As seen in Halo Legends, upon initial contact with the Flood, the Builders, who replaced the original warrior servants, made the mistake of treating the Flood as a disease instead of an enemy and attempted to contain it. Eventually, as the Forerunners began to lose to the Flood, the Didact was brought back, and his original proposal of using the shield worlds to contain Flood outbreaks was resumed, but now they would also serve as safe havens for when the Halos were activated. In an attempt to find a form immune to the Flood, the Didact began doing multiple tests to mutate himself. After a mutation instead caused him to be immune to the Composer, the device we see in Halo 4, the Didact changed his belief to it being the last option against the Flood. Using the Composer to turn his Prometheans into an army of AI fighting machines, the Didact planned, and shortly thereafter also used the Composer on his hated enemy, Ancient Humans. This event led to the Librarian betraying and sealing the Didact in a cryptum on Requiem. There, he stayed and was safe from the firing of the Halo array until his release in Halo 4. The last thing I want to look at before theorizing more on this topic is issue 8, 9, and 10 of the Halo Escalation comics by Dark Horse. In these comic issues, we see that the Didact survives the events of Halo 4, and after his fall into the portal, ended up in a location known as the Composer's Forge. Here, the Didact meets the monitor known as 859 Static Carillion, and as the name implies, this is the location where a Composer can be made. For those of you who don't know, the Composer is a device built by Forerunner builders that turns organic beings' mental content into machine data, effectively making them similar to AI. Something to note is that during the time of these comics, the Didact early on possesses an activation index for a Halo ring. What is also to note is that the activation index for any Halo installation is speculated by Oni scientists in these lines in Halo 4 to possibly have other functions.
Okay, specimen 2006. The artifact is believed to be the activation index for Gamma Halo, based on anecdotal information from Alpha and Delta Halo mission logs. Key component in the activation and firing of the Halo weapon. A few of us have been speculating lately if it has secondary and tertiary purposes as well. Theories still forthcoming.
Knowing that the Didact believed the Halo array to not be in accordance with the Mantle of Responsibility, the idea that he would use this activation index in the comic books to fire a Halo would seem out of line for his history and character. At this point, I would like to bring up a popular theory that arose during the time of the release of these comics. The Didact's hatred for humanity and time spent on Requiem fueled him to want to compose all of humanity. In the Escalation comics, it is implied that a Halo's effect could be combined with the Composer in order to use the Composer on a large scale without fully destroying sentient life. As we know from Halo 4, the Didact used the Composer to imprison humanity and turn them into his Promethean Knights. On the Composer's Forge world, the Didact had the monitor I mentioned before, 849 Static Carillion, move Installation 03, or Gamma Halo, to its location for what was believed to be this purpose. However, before this can happen, and by the end of these comics, the Didact is defeated by Chief, and all Composers that we see on the planet are destroyed. Now learning the history and insight to the background of the Mantle of Responsibility, I want to go back to my question. How will Cortana use the Halo installation or installations she is gathering? To start this answer, Cortana believes in the teachings of the Mantle, and similar to the Didact, I do not believe she will use it to wipe out the galaxy unless the Flood become too great of a threat. Yet, for some reason, we can still see she is gathering the Halo rings. Referring back to the history of the Mantle, and similar to the Didact, could Cortana be planning to use the Composer amplified by the Halo array to compose all who do not follow her will? During Cortana's speech to the galaxy in Halo 5, Cortana says this line.
However, for those who refuse our offer and cling to their own ways,
Well, now she's talking about us.
there will be great wrath. It will burn hot and consume you. And when you are gone, we will take that which remains and we will remake it in our own image.
The threat Cortana gives to those who do not obey her seems oddly familiar to the visual depiction we see of the composer in action. Not only does this threat state the consumption factor, but she also says that it will use the remains of them and remake it in their own image. This process coherently sounds like what the Didact had done with ancient humanity by turning them into the Promethean Knights 100,000 years prior. Taking not only this line, but the history I provided about the Mantle of Responsibility, as well as the similarities that can be drawn between Cortana and the Didact, I believe there is a strong possibility that Cortana could be gathering the Halo Array to amplify the composer's effect while maintaining the morality that she believes to be in line with the Mantle of Responsibility by not eradicating races entirely. Furthermore, something that should be mentioned again and is made known in the Forerunner book trilogy is that the activation of the Halo Array damages the domain. As you can recall in this video, earlier Cortana stated that the domain was the water of life for AIs. If Cortana was to use the Halo Array in its primary purpose, that being to eradicate all sentient life in the galaxy, not only would she be out of line with the moral obligations of the Mantle of Responsibility, but would also be damaging the very thing keeping her and other AI from rampancy. Taking all of these factors into account, whether Cortana uses the Halo Array for the purpose I have proposed in this video or another purpose, I cannot see her willfully using the Halo Array in its primary purpose of eradicating all life in the galaxy while knowing the damage it could cause to herself. Well guys, that's going to be it for this Halo theory video. Please let me know what you guys think about this theory or even your own theory about what Cortana and her use of the Halo Array could be in the comment section below. Also, make sure to include any other topics you guys might want me to cover for a future Halo video. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to like and subscribe for future content, and if you guys ever want to message me directly about anything Halo, feel free to message me on Instagram with the link in the description below. Be sure to check out my podcast every Wednesday where I cover more about my Halo theories, multiplayer, and guest personal opinion on everything Halo. Lastly, I do custom game nights every week from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time Friday. If you would like to join, just make sure to subscribe here on YouTube and check my Instagram link in the description for the dates. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you theorists next time.